Hello everyone, my name is Scalti and welcome back to our Satisfactory Let's Play. Last we left off, we placed down a couple of assemblers and got smart plating automated so that way we can complete phase 1 of the elevator. Went ahead and unlocked a really strong alternate recipe for wire using iron, completed the space elevator, got the Xeno Basher unlocked, great weapon by the way, and also unlocked coal power to take a look at exactly what we would need to get our first power plant created. After doing so, realizing that the parts we need are pretty excessive for manual crafting, let's go ahead and automate them in this beautiful permanent factory that we now have. Overall, I think the aesthetic of this overall architectural design came out really great. It looks futuristic, sci-fi, utopian. The soft corners I think are a wonderful touch, and overall the white concrete is a great juxtaposition against the overall terrain of the map. So, with that being said, it's time to automate power. I hope you enjoy. So, allowing the factory to run for quite some time and ultimately actually manually crafting up a handful of things. I just want to do an inventory check and get that all sorted out. But in order to actually complete the actual build, we're going to need copper pipes. And I know that we temporarily switched over manufacturing of our copper node that we have near our base, but ultimately decided let's just go ahead and actually have a dedicated line for them. So went ahead and tapped into the copper node that's not too far away from us. And as you can see, went ahead and got 3 constructors set up, making our copper sheets so that way we can use them to make our pipes. At this point, it's time to actually re-up our to-do list with the coal generators, water extractors, and miners and pumps that we would need. So in the northwest, we have access to 2 normal nodes and 2 impure nodes. And that by default gives us 180 coal, and it's 120 coal per 8 generators, so 180 gives us access to efficiently feed 12 coal generators. And figured, why not just go ahead and overclock all of our miners, give us access to 360 coal, and then divide that by 3, gives us 120, so that's 120 times 3, 8 times 3, gives us our coal generator count that we Coming up on our build site to the northwest, like I mentioned, we have plenty of water off to the west side, and then we have our 4 nodes. So we have near us, in front of us, we have our 2 impure nodes here and over here. And then off in the distance, we have a normal node over here. And then up on this little plateau, we also have our second normal coal node. So figuring out kind of where we actually wanted to put the overall body of the structure, similar to the prior Let's Play, figured doing it over water would be kind of nice. And here I'm on the world grid and wanted to make sure that my height adjustment was going to be able to cover this little island here, so that way there's just a nice smooth surface going through, and just kind of figuring out how far into the water we want to build things. And the notion here is wanting to make sure that we can expand it once we actually have unlocked, Mark III belts, Mark II miners, etc., so that way we can just kind of continue to expand in a more natural, organic sense to the north and to the south here. And it's a little hard to kind of tell at this stage, but what I'm kind of trying to figure out here is where are the edges of the body of this structure? Where is the overall space going to be in which people would navigate it? I think in a futuristic utopian society of the theme that we're kind of going for here, there is this level of elegance and sophistication through simplicity. And to that point, I think a level of elegance comes with grand open space that's not imposing or confining, and that's kind of what I wanted to go for here. And since we're kind of working with pipes that are circular, I was thinking, all right, how can we use the quarter pipes, for example, to create a level of complementary form that complements the pipes? And so a lot of concepting was done, and trying to figure out how to use these outer corner pipes was definitely a struggle, just because we don't have we have the quarter columns that fit the small portion, but we don't have 8 meter wide quarter columns that fit the bottom of these, or just other types of curvature foundations to kind of complement everything. And it was definitely a challenge to try and figure out how to do this. And ultimately, nothing was really working when trying to use like the quarter pipes and anything, and I kind of came to the realization I'm overcomplicating the process. We already have the look and feel. We did that in our first factory. So why not just continue that, right? But overall, kind of what I was thinking about here is how do we make this expandable as we need to? And the initial thought here was, all right, let's go ahead and build further out from the coast. And here we can see, you know, we have our initial kind of mock-up here, but the idea is to create this grand hallway and continue on overall. But kind of getting a feel for overall size of things. So just figuring out coal generators. We got a double sandwich layer, for example, as you can see here, and just kind of figuring out spacing needs for everything, including the water extractors. How are we going to do the walls with the rounded foundations, etc. Was all definitely process. And also coming to the understanding that, you know, we're going to have 3 individual belts coming into our coal generators. So how are those going to get routed out and split up? But taking a look at our water extractor setup in our first kind of concept here, you know, overall clean orientation, symmetrical in nature. And so we have our pipes coming up. And at the time of recording this too, interestingly enough, I guess it was an unintentional bug, but you were able to snap pipeline wall holes to foundations without actually having to affix them to a wall, which I thought was kind of interesting. But kind of getting this laid out and just kind of demonstrating, you know, how we're actually going to be running our fluids up. Ultimately, we did make a slight adjustment to this, but we can kind of see cleanly here what the overall motif or look is going to be for these. And it's not just going to be, you know, cluttered together water extractors overall, and giving them kind of their own space, if you will. And taking a look at the top side here to kind of show the generator layout. So we have this pod of 8 generators, if you will, and the notion is to take all 8 of these and just repeat them out as far as we need to. And here I'm kind of deliberating, you know, how can we conceal the coal generators to maintain that level of clean look here. So the notion of, you know, using these outer corner extensions and building them all the way up using some nudge and aligning them with the smokestack essentially, and bringing that all the way up, and in a sense, you know, hiding it away like we did our vertical logistics in our factory overall. Ended up getting a little distracted, or not distracted, but went on an intentional tangent. I figured there was a lot of time being spent placing all those foundations, and if the intent is to make this expandable, then it should be templatized, and that's what the blueprint designer can do. So I figured, let's take a look and see what the actual blueprint designer is going to need. So we have to unlock basic steel production and then unlock the blueprint machine. So I went ahead and crafted up the modular frames for it, even though we don't have those automated yet. Went ahead and grabbed the resources, and we got basic steel production unlocked. After that, we went back to our site and went ahead and crafted up, or gathered up some coal, and went through the arduous process of manually crafting up the steel beams we needed to unlock the blueprint machine. And ultimately, really glad that we did. So just to kind of show and demonstrate all the different blueprints that were created, we have our interior corner essentially right, and then created a mirror interior corner left, and then for the initial design of how we're going to be laying out the water extractors, we just have a simple corner piece that can be rotated, but is rotationally symmetrical, if that makes sense. But you can see here we got our interior left, and then, as I mentioned, our interior right. And then we also have these, call them protrusions, if you will, that will kind of hug the water extractor, and this is just due to the limitation of the 4x4 Mark I blueprint machine. And after some additional testing of the overall layout, realized we needed one more blueprint, which is the T-junction that I've called it. So that way we can actually extend out the water extractors rather than going away from the coast, because that's going to be fairly limited. It made sense, let's stretch this north and south just because of the amount of space that we have available. And unfortunately, at the time of recording this as well, there was an issue with the blueprint machine where the blueprints themselves, when trying to place them, were a little offset, but thankfully we had access to the nudge functionality to get those all properly aligned. And with the feeling of comfort in the overall way we're going to be getting everything set up here, went ahead and went through the process of getting all of our water extractors placed down and piped as well. And a little bit of interesting kind of behavior with the pipes initially, but once I kind of figured out what was kind of going on, it wasn't too bad to overall resolve. Once we started to get our coal generator portion underway, I had this cool aerial view of kind of looking at the natural curves, or not natural curves, but the curvature of all the foundations and everything. But went ahead and readjusted the coal generator layout. So instead of doing the 2x4 pods, went ahead and actually set it up to do 8x1, and then we'll essentially just mirror them as needed overall, similar to the existing type structure. And taking a look down below, just to kind of show how cleanly this kind of turned out, is we have 2 coal generators, then a water extractor, 2 more coal generators, then another water extractor, so on and so forth. So there's going to be this nice opportunity for repetition and patterning, if you will, as we continue to expand these in the future once we have access to more coal. Next up was making sure that we would actually be able to get our water up to the coal generators. And if you are not familiar, there is an opportunity where you can essentially create a water tower using a very limited amount of pumps. And that's what we're doing here, where we only need to essentially have one pipeline with pumps on it that brings the water up to whatever elevation we need. And then as long as the other pipes are connected to it, they won't need pumps to actually transport fluid vertically. If you want to learn more about that, I'll put the water fluids mechanics video in the description below. It's very beneficial to save on power and resources for pumps, not to mention just logistics in general. Once we got our pipe work set up, figured it was probably time to take a little bit of a break from that area and figure out how we're going to bring the coal over to this overall structure, and created these little pods, if you will, that the miners can sit in. And this was, the Mark 1 attempt, and just trying to figure out, what would the logistical infrastructure look like when we're trying to transport, belting, potentially even pipe work as well. And there was a lot of kind of back and forth concepting here, but you can see that we dedicated a blueprint to the overall design, and it's just a single placement drop, and the snapping is a little finicky, as you can see here. It took a little bit of learning and understanding just to try and figure out exactly how we could actually get this blueprint placed while also snapping to the blueprint grid. One of the things that we can see here is we have these, we'll call them, are just bus pillars or belt pillars, if you will. And this current version, supports 2 belts. We've got a nice little nifty ladder over here on the side to get us up and, kind of working on stuff. But the, round columns and everything, I think, fit the overall structure really well. And initially we were running the power up top here just to kind of get that all sorted out, and then we would just kind of cut it through the foundation, as you can see here, and get it all powered over. But ultimately decided, rather than running it on top, it made a little bit more sense to run it down the bottom. And here we can see that we have our 3 belts coming in. So we'd have our impure node over here bringing up 60, another impure node over there bringing up 60, and then merging over here to give us our singular line of 120. And then the other 2 lines next to it also providing 120. But this was definitely an interesting, semi-challenging process to kind of figure that out, and ultimately bringing it over and getting everything kind of loosely set up with power connection. And the overall logistics for the generator is pretty simple. It's just a 1 to 2 to 4 to 8 overall, nothing overly complex, and that gives each generator 15 coal per minute. And as you can see here, we have a central line for the coal as we break it out from the core 3, so that way as we continue to expand power in the future, we'd be able to easily do that. And then also getting a few biofuel burners set up to initially jumpstart our system. The other thing that I wanted to kind of point out here too is, similar to the constructors and assemblers in the other build, was how we were going to route power cleanly. And so kind of demonstrating here how we're, clipping the power through the walls, but if it's tucked into the wall, that stands to reason that there would be some type of intentional architecture infrastructure to allow the power to appropriately run through everything overall. And then just to, continue to route power as needed, we can just connect it left to right there. And as we expand out, just be able to quickly connect up other systems. After an initial power up, just to make sure everything is working correctly, came to the realization that our pump here is a little too high above the water extractor's output, and we ultimately did not have enough head lift to get the water up to the pump to begin with, unfortunately. So ultimately decided, we can't hide the pump outright with how we have everything set up for the water extractors. Not a big deal. Like I said, you only need a limited amount of pumps. So just having a couple exposed here and there ultimately wasn't a deal breaker for me. Unfortunately, at the time of recording as well, there was an interesting bug that was not known at the time, where if the proximity of a pump or a junction or a valve was too close in proximity to a pipeline floor hole, it would actually disconnect the pipe. And so we ended up having this pretty random fluctuation of power supply, just because I couldn't troubleshoot it because everything was connected, at least visually connected, but could not figure out for the life of me why we did not have enough water coming into everything. Everything else was set up correctly, but ultimately it was weird. So did a little bit of testing here just to kind of figure out, all right, do we bring the water up a little higher than the coal generators just to try and get that figured out? Did a good bit of testing and ultimately resolved it by just adding more water extractors just to overflow the amount of water ultimately needed for just our coal generators. But also, as an extra precaution, went ahead and actually created a little bit of a mini water tower and added in another pump and got that all powered up, but in just like a clean kind of tucked away system, as you can see, with kind of like the quarter pipe pillars there, just so that way we can bring water up and make the output from this the key pipe that would then feed into all of our coal generators. I do want to take the opportunity real quick to kind of show the blueprint for our logistic pillars. And so essentially, we create the top piece, and then as it's easier to kind of build down from this perspective, utilizing the blueprint build mode. Again, having to nudge because at the time, the blueprints were a little off-centered, which was a little annoying to deal with, but overall not too bad. So created essentially the roof, the floor, and then the actual base that can be expanded down into the ground as needed, just so that way everything can be level overall when transporting our material. So we also have, the standard pillar, and then we also have these corner pillars, so that way we can elbow turns overall. And something that's kind of not super obvious with this design style here is its vertical modularity. Based on how everything's kind of set up, we can do multiple floors if we had multiple levels of logistics being routed, which works really well. And, it's just a matter of just building foundations in between each of the pillars to get the appropriate spacing. But then, we can use lifts like you can kind of see there with how we can transport it vertically through the overall pillar system as well, which I think came out pretty great. Last but not least, for our blueprints, we also have our 3 wide going on, and also 3 wide and our 3 wide elbow, as we just saw. And trying to figure out, how to route the coal up from some of the miners and whatnot was a little tricky, and had to kind of extend the roof. You can see kind of off in the distance there. But overall, really happy with how our logistics system came out. I think it looks pretty clean. It's a little too exposed in some circumstance, but I think as like a first just kind of attempt, and because it is blueprinted, it won't be that tedious to deconstruct overall. But I do think it came out pretty good. Additionally, it is possible to hide the ladder system inside of the columns here. So to get back up on top, initially it was exposed on the outside, and here I'm trying to remember where I put the ladders at. But it is kind of possible to hide them away here. So it looks like I'm crawling up on nothing, but you can see the ladder highlight when I go to dismantle, and then just get up to the top and a little quick jump and I'm back up top. So it's a pretty decent ease of access getting back up top. Ultimately though, after a little bit of polish, here is the final result. So we got our power cleaned up. We're now routing all of our power underneath the beltways. We got all of our generators built. We have that kind of white block in between the generators sticking out. That is our quote unquote water tower in the middle there. But I gotta say, this is a look that I can definitely enjoy, and having built with it a good bit now, it's not too tedious. I definitely think rushing and manually crafting what we needed for the blueprint machine was definitely worth it. So yeah, we have our 2 impure nodes, 2 normal nodes all coming together. And once again, forgetting where the ladder is. It's over on this pillory goofball. But yeah, great result. Like I said, it took double-digit hours, probably 20-ish hours to get all of this designed, concepted, laid out into a space that I felt good with overall. So, like this miner here came out pretty good with the quarter pipe system, and then how we kind of have this coming up. I might revise them so that way we don't have like that weird little piece sticking out. But overall, what I would like to think is a pretty successful, clean result for transporting logistics across terrain, but then also just how it's all included in this whole structure here. Little elegant solution I think here is how we have the merger off to the side and kind of tucked away and not floating, so that way it's merging up with our other belt and bringing our product in, and then going through this little slit, if you will, to come into the interior. We got some stairs going up to the top, and a little not polished on the interior here overall, but after spending so much time working on this build, I got it to a spot where I was like, all right, I'm okay with this for now. So this block here, that's where the water tower is, where we got the pump going up overall, and I had to get a few things sorted out with the pumps, and ultimately came to that conclusion. So we got 3 pumps overall that are fulfilling the head lift requirements for all the fuel in the build. And coming up top, so that's the water tower that's hidden away in here, just kind of showing the fluid buffer that's in there. The fluid buffer is not necessary. I just put it in there just as a way to kind of see if it's actually filling with water. Not to mention, because we are overproducing water in the event that we do run out, maybe a power grid failure or something like that, that fluid buffer will kind of help a little bit, give us an opportunity to kind of salvage everything. But showing off the sides here, so filled everything in with the half foundation walls, and I wanted to fully enclose all of those layers as well. But down on the ground here, we do have this ramp coming up and in. I think it probably could use a little bit of refinement overall, but here's our main body. Like I said, I wanted to go big and grand. I wanted it to feel open and accessible, and not feel constrained overall. So the windows on the sides, I think, were a nice touch to kind of incorporate some natural light to possibly come in. Eventually we will be lighting all of this up in the not too distant future, and we have that space over there, that little dead end, as an opportunity for future expansion once we need it and have the means in which to utilize that space. But like I said, these nice big open windows I thought were pretty slick and came out really strong. Eventually, probably consider filling them in with glass, walls, but for the moment I think it just kind of works as is. And with everything being, for the most part, a blueprint, I think was just such a huge time saver overall in getting this done. And I definitely think rushing the blueprint Mark 1 was definitely worth it. So I left that little endpoint there open for future expansion as well. But with that, I think we'll wrap it up here. Overall, good progress getting automated power up and running. If you did like the video, feel free to leave a like. It does help out the channel. If you want to see more content in the future, be sure to subscribe if you're not already. And as always, if you have any questions about what I did in this video or any other video, leave a comment below or on that specific video, and I'll be sure to reply as quickly as I can. So with that, thank you so much for watching. Take care. I'll see you in the next one.